On the morning of September 4, 2004, Julie Keown awoke with an unsettling dizziness. Within minutes, her words became jumbled and her legs refused to cooperate. By the time she arrived at a Boston hospital, she could barely move. Doctors rushed to her aid as her body began to shut down, but the cause remained a mystery. Just days before, Julie had been laughing with her family. Now she teetered on the brink of death. Blood tests revealed something unusual, yet the answer eluded them until a perceptive nurse ordered a test that most would overlook. Beneath the surface of smiling photos and weekend getaways lay a tangled web of ambition, debt, and betrayal, a truth that would take years to unravel. In the quiet town of Plattsburgh, Missouri, nestled in the heart of the Midwest, Julie Irene Old Dog, later known as Julie Keown, grew up in a nurturing environment. Born on May 16, 1973, she was the eldest of two children, sharing her childhood with her younger brother, Chad. The Old family resided in a charming farmhouse that mirrored the steady rural life they led. Julie's parents, Nancy and Jack, were well respected in their community. They lived modestly but comfortably, supported by the fruits of their farming labor. Life on the farm instilled in Julie a sense of responsibility and humility. Surrounded by nature and grounded in strong religious faith, her childhood was marked by stability and care. Julie was the kind of person who left a lasting impression, empathetic, selfless, and always ready to help. Her quiet strength made her dependable, and she developed a strong sense of purpose from a young age. Academically, she excelled, thanks to the support of her close-knit family, consistently earning praise from her teachers. Her compassion ultimately led her to pursue a career in nursing. Determined to follow this path, Julie enrolled at William Jewell College in Liberty, Missouri. There, she not only excelled in her studies, but also forged lasting friendships. Despite her academic and personal successes, Julie often felt something was missing. Many of her friends began building romantic relationships, and she too hoped to find someone to share her life with. It was through a mutual friend that she met James Keown on a blind date. James, a year younger than Julie, had a contrasting personality. Charismatic, outgoing, and ambitious, he was well known on campus for his work at the college radio station and aspired to a career in broadcasting. Coming from a well-off family, the Keowns enjoyed certain privileges. His father, a respected lobbyist, and his mother, Betty, had high hopes for their 6 children. James stood out among his siblings, bold, confident, and accustomed to drawing attention, traits that earned him both admirers and critics. In July, James found a calming presence in Julie. Her gentleness balanced his intensity, while she was drawn to his energy and drive. Their connection was immediate, and it wasn't long before they became inseparable, a campus couple known by all. Their relationship brought out the best in each other, with Julie's quiet determination complementing James's enthusiasm as they pursued their individual goals. While still in college, James secured a job as a local radio host. His drive and talent quickly made his voice familiar to listeners in the area. Meanwhile, Julie remained focused on her studies and clinical training, preparing for the demands of nursing. After graduation, they took the next step and married, relocating to Kansas City to build a life together. Professionally, both flourished. Julie began working at a hospital where her natural empathy and strong work ethic made her an exceptional nurse. She connected with her patients, seeing each as a person rather than just a case. Her superiors admired her dedication. James thrived in his radio career, juggling jobs at 2 different stations and steadily rising through the ranks. Together, they embodied a picture of success, young, ambitious, and deeply committed to their respective professions. Their life appeared happy and secure, a union built on shared values, mutual support, and a blend of quiet strength and public charisma. However, as James's professional responsibilities expanded, so did the demands on his schedule. Though he earned a generous income, his days became increasingly packed with meetings, commitments, and side projects. Both he and Julie found themselves caught in a fast-paced lifestyle that left little room for downtime. Their home, while filled with love, often felt empty due to their absence. Life became a whirlwind of early mornings, long workdays, and late returns. Despite his growing workload, James made efforts to keep their relationship strong. He surprised Julie with spontaneous weekend getaways and thoughtful gifts, tokens of affection she cherished, though she never asked for them. Julie adored him. Her love for James was steadfast, deep, and unshakable. The couple moved frequently to accommodate James's career moves, living in Chicago for a time before settling back in Kansas. These transitions were not easy, but Julie remained supportive, adapting to new environments with grace. Professionally, James was seen as creative, versatile, and sharp. He had studied marketing, which showed in everything he did. Bursting with ideas and strategies, he became a valuable asset to any company, and his income reflected this. The Keowns enjoyed a privileged life, owning a stunning home and frequently traveling. While Julie found joy in simple things, James preferred the finer side of life, proudly wearing his Rolex and driving sleek new vehicles, replacing them every couple of years. Julie's family noticed and were pleased to see her thriving in what appeared to be a happy, successful marriage. As time passed, relatives began to question when the couple might start a family. Behind closed doors, however, this topic brought pain. Julie and James had been trying to conceive for years. Their efforts were sincere, their longing real. They consulted specialists, underwent numerous tests, and explored every avenue available to them, yet they were left without answers. Nothing medically explained their infertility. Still, they pressed on, hoping and praying while carrying the weight of uncertainty. James, ever ambitious, remained focused on personal growth and professional advancement. Though he had already gained local recognition as a radio presenter, he aspired to reach higher. In 2003, he applied to Harvard Business School, was accepted, and awarded a prestigious scholarship. This news was life-changing. The Keowns abruptly relocated to Boston for James to begin his studies. Julie transitioned to remote work in medical software, while James took on remote marketing work. For Julie, this move meant emotional distance from home. She missed her parents, her brother, and the familiar comforts of Missouri. Yet her love for James outweighed her homesickness, and she dedicated herself to supporting him, proudly speaking of his achievements and expressing admiration for his determination. James, now mingling with elite minds at Harvard, continued to cultivate his public image. Yet, despite all his accomplishments, he seemed endlessly hungry for more. Julie clung to the hope of becoming a mother, but her health began to decline in ways she couldn't ignore. Roughly 8 months after their move, she was struck by persistent fatigue. Her muscles ached, her immune system faltered, and she found herself frequently ill. Despite undergoing multiple medical exams, doctors found no clear explanation. Then, on August 20, 2004, things took a sudden and alarming turn. Julie woke with a pounding headache and an overwhelming sense of disorientation. The room spun around her, and her speech began to slur. Simple tasks became insurmountable. She could barely write or hold a pen. Terrified, the couple rushed to the hospital. Upon arrival, Julie was visibly deteriorating, struggling to sign consent forms as her motor functions rapidly declined. The medical staff immediately recognized the gravity of her condition. After running urgent tests, doctors began to suspect a link to her kidneys. Whatever was happening was advancing quickly, and Julie was now in serious danger. In August 2004, Julie received news that would shift the course of her life. Her kidneys were no longer functioning properly. Until then, her health issues had been a troubling mystery, and only now did some doctors begin to suspect that her infertility might be connected to deeper chronic kidney problems. Still, despite extensive testing, the puzzle remained incomplete. Her symptoms were severe: muscle weakness, confusion, fatigue, but not everything aligned with a standard kidney failure diagnosis. Physicians considered the possibility of a rare renal disorder, but nothing they found offered a full explanation. Julie spent 3 days in the hospital. Surprisingly, her condition began to improve without any clear medical intervention. With no concrete diagnosis beyond the kidney concerns, she was discharged. Doctors remained perplexed, but her symptoms had eased and Julie was eager to reset. She decided to take a short trip back to Missouri to visit her family. Surrounded by familiar faces and rural comfort, Julie seemed to blossom. Her spirits lifted, her strength returned, and her loved ones were relieved to see her smiling again. At that moment, it seemed like the worst had passed, but that hope was short-lived. Soon after returning to Boston, Julie's health declined once more. The strange symptoms returned: dizziness, fatigue, and speech issues, though this time they were slightly less intense. Her family, now deeply concerned, began to wonder whether these episodes were somehow psychological. Perhaps the distance from home, the stress of relocation, or even the emotional toll of infertility was manifesting physically. Even her doctors floated the possibility that her symptoms could be stress-induced. Yet, no one could rule out that something more serious was still unfolding beneath the surface. Tragically, on September 4, 2004, just 2 weeks after her first hospitalization, Julie's condition took a dramatic and terrifying turn. She was admitted to the hospital again, but this time the situation was dire. She could barely speak, her body was nearly paralyzed, and within hours of her arrival, she slipped into a coma. The doctors now understood that her kidneys were only part of the problem. Whatever was attacking her body was far more destructive and mysterious than they had realized. Despite extensive diagnostic efforts, nothing pointed to a definitive cause. Her organs began shutting down one by one. Then, a stroke of insight, almost accidental, changed everything. A nurse, struck by the unusual nature of the case, suggested a toxicology screening. Such tests weren't standard in situations like this, but her hunch turned out to be crucial. When the toxicology report came back, it revealed a chilling truth. Julie had ethylene glycol in her system. This chemical, commonly found in antifreeze and engine coolant, is deadly when ingested. Its symptoms mirrored those Julie had endured: kidney failure, confusion, physical deterioration. The discovery confirmed it. Julie had been poisoned. On that very day, September 4th, as Julie lay comatose and unresponsive, her family arrived at the hospital. They were devastated to find her in such a condition, unable to communicate or even open her eyes. There was nothing left to do but wait. 4 days later, on September 8, 2004, Julie passed away at the age of 31. Despite the medical team's best efforts, the diagnosis had come too late. Her body was simply too damaged. Julie's death sent shockwaves through her family and friends. Just days earlier, she had been talking and laughing with them. Now, she was gone. As the toxicology results surfaced, her parents immediately suspected foul play. Someone had administered this poison, and the circumstances pointed to someone close. Suspicion naturally fell on her husband, James. By that time, law enforcement had already begun looking into the matter. The presence of ethylene glycol triggered an automatic investigation. Detectives began collecting medical records, witness statements, and household items that could be relevant. Publicly, James portrayed the role of the grieving husband, expressing shock, sadness, and confusion over what had happened. He denied any involvement, even suggesting that Julie may have taken the antifreeze herself, perhaps in a moment of depression over her health struggles, their recent relocation, and their inability to have children. But not everyone was convinced. The nurse who had first recommended the toxicology screening later confided that she found James's behavior unsettling from the beginning. He dominated conversations with doctors, answered questions meant for Julie, and gave off the impression that he was controlling every aspect of her care. Something didn't feel right. While some believed James's behavior at the hospital could be explained by Julie's inability to speak. Perhaps he was simply trying to advocate for her. Others found it unsettling. At one point, James suggested a strange theory that Julie might have consumed antifreeze by mistake, thinking it was another liquid. Investigators grew more suspicious when they discovered that Julie had a $250,000 life insurance policy. On the surface, this might not seem like a significant motive for a man who appeared to live comfortably. But questions arose. Was James truly as wealthy as he appeared, or was it all an illusion? Not long after Julie's death, another piece of the puzzle emerged. The landlord of their Boston apartment reached out to authorities, revealing that James had vanished without warning, abandoning the apartment and leaving behind personal effects: Julie's wedding dress, their wedding rings, and photographs from their ceremony. These were not things a grieving husband would typically part with. Soon after, it was confirmed that James had returned to Missouri and taken a job as a talk show host at a local radio station, seemingly eager to start fresh. Investigators discovered that the rent for his Boston apartment had gone unpaid for months, and his luxury vehicle had been repossessed. Even more disturbing, James had falsified a letter claiming acceptance to Harvard Business School, an elaborate lie he used to justify working remotely for a marketing company. That same company had hired him to develop a website, a high-stakes project that earned him significant pay. However, James failed to deliver any results. It was unclear whether he lacked the necessary skills or simply chose not to do the work. What became evident was that he had been embezzling funds designated for the project. His resume was riddled with falsehoods, listing positions in companies he had never worked for. No one, not even Julie, had known the extent of his deception. Despite pretending to go to work each day, purchasing new furniture, and maintaining his lavish lifestyle, James was spiraling into financial ruin. The utilities were on the verge of being cut, and he had no stable income. Against that backdrop, Julie's life insurance policy began to look more and more like a potential lifeline. Back in Missouri, James told new acquaintances conflicting stories about Julie's death. In some versions, she had succumbed to a mysterious illness. In others, she had taken her own life. When asked what he planned to do with the insurance money, he responded casually that he would buy a new BMW. He even mentioned that he had started seeing someone new and hoped to build a family. Meanwhile, the investigation pressed forward, with James now firmly in the spotlight. Despite growing suspicion, direct evidence against him was elusive. His behavior raised many red flags, but the case remained circumstantial. Friends recalled James saying that he wouldn't be convicted. After all, it was only circumstantial. Strangely, he never explicitly denied involvement in Julie's death. Detectives continued combing through physical evidence, searching James's home, his family's property, and the Boston apartment, but nothing was found. The breakthrough came from James's computer. Though he had attempted to erase the hard drive, forensic specialists recovered search history containing chilling phrases such as "how to get rid of someone" and "antifreeze poisoning." These findings aligned disturbingly well with the toxicology results. Investigators also learned that weeks before Julie's death, James had been encouraging her to drink Gatorade. Tests revealed that the poison had likely been administered over time, explaining her mysterious illness in August. On this foundation, prosecutors built their case. In 2005, James was arrested, and his trial began in 2008. Prosecutors faced an uphill battle, as the evidence was largely circumstantial. However, James's financial troubles, the false persona he constructed, and the timing of Julie's poisoning painted a damning portrait. Many who had once admired James were shocked to discover the web of lies he had maintained. Still, some described him as a loving husband and questioned whether he could be capable of such a calculated act. The defense worked to raise reasonable doubt, suggesting that Julie's emotional distress, triggered by health struggles and infertility, might have led her to ingest the antifreeze herself, whether by accident or intent. They questioned the accuracy of toxicology reports and the timeline of her decline. Most importantly, they emphasized that there was no definitive proof that James had physically administered the poison. But the jury saw through the facade. The search history, the Gatorade connection, the insurance policy, and James's pattern of deceit were too much to ignore. While no antifreeze container was ever found, the medical evidence confirmed that Julie had been poisoned over time. In her final weeks, she had written to friends noting James's care and that he had encouraged her to drink the vitamin-laced beverage, even though she disliked the taste. Perhaps the most telling moment came after the funeral. James wasted no time collecting the insurance payout. In 2008, James Keown was found guilty of first-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The court concluded that he had deliberately and gradually poisoned his wife by lacing her drinks with ethylene glycol, the toxic substance found in antifreeze. To this day, James maintains his innocence, but Julie's family is unwavering in their belief that justice was served. In 2017, the Massachusetts Supreme Judicial Court upheld his conviction, ruling the evidence against him overwhelming. Julie Keown is remembered as a compassionate nurse, a devoted wife, and a loving daughter, stolen from the world far too soon. Her warmth, sincerity, and grace live on in the hearts of those who knew her and in the enduring pursuit of truth that followed her untimely death. Don't miss out. Subscribe now for more thrilling investigations.